Would you say, though, that if you were in the South in 1850, that you could probably express essentially the same sentiments? How difficult it would be to be a Christian, setting aside whether you're black or white for the moment. Let's just say you're white, because then you'd be free. That you would to live, to be a Christian in a society where they have essentially looked at the book of Exodus and said, man, Pharaoh got it right. That was actually another one of my black friends that got that, Christian friends that got that analogy in my head, but it's very much true.
Yeah.
So if you've got a society that's so backwards morally that they think Pharaoh's the good guy, and they need to emulate his example and call themselves Christians in the process, that's got to put you. And we recall that lynch mobs had the habit of, before and after the Civil War, with second generation slavery, aka Jim Crow, hanging not just black people that got uppity, but also their white allies and friends. So where do you put yourself at that moment?
It's a tough position to be in.
And I'm just saying, like, isn't that pretty much of like maybe a mirror image or a variation on that same conundrum you would face today?
I think absolutely. But, God's grace is sufficient for us in every situation, and his grace is made perfect in weakness. And so we would just hope that, you do what you have to do. And it's difficult for me because, my religious life is so tied up to this, multinational, ginormous religious institution. And yours is a little bit more free flow. And both of those groups owned slaves during during these periods. So it's not like we're saying that there was someone who was, their hands clean in this scenario, except maybe the Quakers. I think the Quakers were always, God bless the Quakers, right? They always get it right. But, it's kind of like, yeah, it'd be a tough situation for everyone, right?
And that particular facet of your spiritual life, the earthly institution or the physical institution, obviously you've helped me to discover lately, Alex, that I have my own version of this as a classical American liberal, 90s era, like, optimistic. Formally speaking, I don't see the president of the United States as the head of some spiritual kingdom or earthly church or something. But like, the way I get concerned about who occupies the office, I can read the Bible. I know that in theory, at least, emperors rise and fall with the regularity of the ocean waves. But man, it sure bothers me who holds that office. And I watch that in kind of, it's at least enough of the same way that I've seen you watch papal politics.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. And I would say that I don't think we're supposed to be purely, like, I don't think the Christian conception is that we don't care about temporal needs and necessities and goods and offices. I think it says that we should have those things in right proportion. So I don't think this is necessarily wrong. And I don't think that it's authentically Christian to kind of have allegiance only to the spiritual hereafter. I think that should be the final allegiance should be to God. But the question is how that allegiance pours forth into our politics in this day and age. Because you can understand it gets kind of complicated for me when I look at something like the Papal States. That's kind of a weird, it's a weird thing to think about. That's a weird conundrum for me, but it's I think it's kind of a similar thing for both of us because it's impossible not to care.
And I'm not going to get partisan here. This is not the right place for it. But let's just say if the person I don't want to be in the presidency generates scandals, just hypothetically, Maybe lots of scandals, and it's a lot of media coverage. He's a colorful figure, perhaps. It does honestly, like, when I got out of control and I forgot that my allegiance, as Paul says, our citizens are it's actually the word we get politics from, interestingly enough. Not that that's word studies are tricky, but I think it's ironic. We politic. He kind of literally says we politic in heaven and not in this world. And so I do set a line. I do set a boundary, which is I do not become politically active. To me, it's like halfway between, I think, what you see in papal politics, Vatican politics, magisterium, and a sporting event. It obviously matters more than who throws the pigskin down a certain amount of field or kicks the ball into a goal. A lot more. But from a Christian perspective, he raises up and he sets down, and the kingdom moves on. And if America was nuked into oblivion, the kingdom would continue to advance. So I'm aware of that. And that's the line I don't cross. I do not get invested with my actual treasure into unless it serves a broader purpose for the kingdom, such as a missionary at UWM-ish. People have political opinions, liberals, conservatives. I found as a detoxing MSNBC type, whether I gave away my allegiance, MSNBC type left radical anti-Trump person, I found that in the detoxing phase, I'm able to kind of float between both sides and bridge in a way. So it can serve a valuable purpose, but I'm not going to go out and hold Biden or Kamala or Obama signs or whatever. I don't think. This is a very tricky question, but for the broad mass of Christians, I do not believe that's appropriate. I do not believe that's productive. And I do not believe it can do anything but alienate people needlessly from the gospel. We're divided in this country about 50-50 these days, which means if you take one side or the other publicly, you're automatically going to alienate half the people that you want to hear your message.
I mean, precisely. And I think it's sad when people get so caught up into the back and forth of these kind of fading institutions. I mean, you get so caught up in them. But that's the beauty of being a Christian. I think it was Chesterton that said, in this case, he used Catholicism, but Catholicism does one the incredible service of freeing one from being a child of one's age. And so I think it's so beautiful I think it can be brought out to be unshackled, so to speak, from the oppression of the present moment, the present fad, the present passing good.
Without getting into internal questions between Catholics and Protestants too in depth, in this context, I am curious for you to lay out how you avoid a similar trap with both internal controversies within the Catholic Church. Now, you could do a thought experiment, go back to 14th century, 15th century, I believe, with the Great Schism, right?
Roughly, yeah.